Good morning. Before we get started, I've been notified by New Bedford member John Tierney that he desires to participate remotely in today's meeting because his geographic distance from Nantucket makes his physical attendance today unreasonably difficult. I agree with Mr. Tierney, and as the authority's chairman, I hereby determine that Mr. Tierney's physical attendance today is unreasonably difficult due to his geographic distance from Nantucket, and therefore that he may participate remotely in this meeting, which includes voting on all matters as well. Mr. Tierney will be doing so by a conference call that enables him to be clearly audible to us and each of us to be clearly audible to him. As a result of Mr. Tierney's remote participation in this meeting, all votes taken by the board today shall be by roll call vote. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes of our August 20, 2013 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. I have one comment on our minutes from last time. In the first paragraph, it appears that our meeting took place in Hyannis Bluffs. So I don't know if we sort of met between Hyannis and Oak Bluffs, or...
Oh my god, yes.
Or they changed the name of Hyannis without me knowing, or what?
The recorder was headed for vacation.
Other than that, we have a motion to approve the minutes. We're going to take a roll call on that. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Our second order of business is the general manager's report.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The first item is the business summary for the month of July. We carried an additional 174 passengers in July compared to the same period last month. Based on 452,000 passengers carried in July last year, that is basically a rounding error in terms of a percentage increase. The total number of automobiles carried was down 1.5% from the previous year, and the total number of trucks carried was up 10.6% from July 2012. I think part of the reason for the decrease was that there were 12 weekend days in July last year, this year, compared to 13 weekend days in July of last year. Our operating revenues and other income in July were up $178,000 compared to our original budget projections for the month. Our operating expenses and fixed charges in July were up $202,000 versus our budget estimate. And the authority's net operating income in July was $6,300,000, which was $24,000 lower than the amount that we had projected in the 2013 operating budget. For the first 7 months of 2013, the total number of passengers carried was off 0.9% compared to last year. The total number of automobiles carried was off 1.8%, and the total number of trucks carried was up 4%. The authority's operating revenues and other income for the first 7 months of 2013 were $194,000 higher than our budget projections. Our operating expenses and fixed charges, however, were $1,805,000 higher than our budget projections, and most of this additional expense was related to the cost of repairing the Oak Bluffs dock damage due to Hurricane Sandy. The authority's net operating loss for the first 7 months of 2013 stood at $1,993,000, which was $1,611,000 higher than the amount that we had projected. And our net operating income estimate for 2013 for the year was $3,180,000. So at the end of July, we're running up about $1.6 million behind that amount.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, where's our reimbursement money on the Oak Bluffs project?
Still working on that. And the reimbursement will actually fall below the line.
I understand that, but
I'd
I'd like to see the cash.
yeah, I as well. We need to have it in for the complete the transfers for the year, so.
Yeah. Any schedule? Are they giving us any reasonable information?
No, and there were some recent change orders that we had for O Plus, so I wanted to see if we can add those to the request. So.
Yeah. We're going to get it? Are you confident?
We're going to get it, it's just a matter of need to get things wrapped up, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other questions on that. Just a quick status update on some of the current capital projects. The Hyannis Harbor dredging project, we arranged a meeting on August 21st with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Coast Guard officials, as well as state and local officials, to discuss the resumption of emergency dredging work that was not completed in July, and to discuss longer-term need to program regular maintenance dredging for the Hyannis Harbor Federal Channel. The Corps of Engineers indicated that they are scheduling a dredge to return in November for approximately 14 days to complete the dredging work that was started, the emergency dredge work that was started this summer. In addition, we talked about the need for ongoing maintenance dredging, and we have recently sent a letter to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with information about the economic importance of maintaining the authorized depths and width of the channel, and to preserve this vital link and lifeline for the island of Nantucket. Congressman Bill Keating has been very supportive of our ongoing efforts to get the necessary emergency dredging completed, and we're also working with his office to secure funding for regular condition surveys of the channel and maintenance dredging, which we hope might occur every 5 to 10 years, based on those surveys of the channel. And we really appreciate everybody's efforts in bringing the temporary relief, but we still need to do a lot of work on a long-term maintenance dredging program for Hyannis Harbor. The feasibility study for the Woods Hole Terminal reconstruction project, that is still on schedule. We are working with the engineers, Moffett and Nickel, to develop some concept drawings showing different potential slip alignments for the Woods Hole Terminal. The staff has reviewed those preliminary drawings and have provided some feedback. We have a meeting coming up. The team, the steering committee, has a meeting with the architects and the engineers scheduled for October 3rd. And the principal difference in the drawings is how far the slips extend into the water towards the limit of the federal channel in Woods Hole. But the staff realizes that there's also a navigational limit to how far we can extend the slips and still give the captains enough room to safely make their approach into the slip under the kind of weather and tide conditions that we operate in. So there is a limit as to how far out, the further out we go, a shorter distance than the captains have once they make the turn to line up and for their approach to the slip. So we may only be moving the transfer bridges out in the water from their current position, perhaps another 20 or 30 feet from the current bulkhead. And then the transfer bridge itself will be a little bit longer than the ones we currently have in Woods Hole. It will go from a 30-foot bridge to a 50-foot bridge. So we're probably looking at moving the slip out maybe 40, 50 feet at this point. That's something we're going to look at.
Would there be fill behind that, or would they be floating, or what?
Probably filled, but it could be a dock or a wharf arrangement like we have in Vineyard Haven, where part of that dock is pile supported, concrete pier supported on steel piles.
Yes, sir.
Greg Gifford, I'm sure, is part of this conversation.
Yes, he's part of the committee.
Are there senior captains involved in this conversation also?
There was at least one that was in this meeting that we had this week, the staff meeting, to kind of go over and do a preliminary review of it.
Yeah.
And so
We're concerned if we don't buy them in, they won't buy in. Who needs to listen to that?
Well, listen to them and trying to make the mouth of the slips a little bit wider so they could come in at different angles under different tide and wind conditions.
Dolphin configuration.
The outboard dolphin configurations kind of spread them out a little more and open up the mouth of the slip to give them a little more room.
It's going to be a critical exercise.
The other thing is the design of the new vessel and this update on the request for qualifications. A copy of that document, the request for qualifications, was sent out towards the end of last month to some 40 firms, including vessel design firms, and a number of shipyards were on that list. The deadline for submitting those responses to our request for qualifications is tomorrow. We've already started to receive some, but the deadline is tomorrow. So we expect to pre-qualify up to perhaps 4 or 5 firms that would be invited to submit a more detailed proposal for design services for our new vessel. We are in the process of finalizing the request for proposals for vessel design services that will be sent out to these pre-qualified firms. But we want to make sure that we are including all of the right parameters and that the board agrees with what we're putting out there. In response to a comment that at last month's board meeting, I've also included in your meeting packet some information on the average number of passengers carried per trip on each vessel by month for 2012. You'll see that fewer than 2.5% of our total trips that we operated in Woods Hole, between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard last year, carried more than 500 passengers. We had proposed a passenger capacity of a little over 500 passengers, including crew. For the new vessel, we think that will be adequate under most conditions. But we'd like to review this as well as the other design parameters that were included in the request for qualifications prior to including those in the request for a proposal that we will be releasing probably within the next 2 weeks. We are looking to have the proposal submitted by early November so that we can complete our review of the proposals that have been received by mid to late November, and which would put us in a position to recommend the award of a contract for vessel design services by the December authority meeting. So as part of the request for qualifications that went out on page 2 was a list of the design parameters that we were giving them to give potential design firms an idea of the size of the vessel, some of the amenities, some of the characteristics that we would be looking for.
We would be the owner of this plan.
Yes, once we would contract with a design firm, and as part of that contract, we would expect that we would own the plans and design of the new vessel. There was a question of the draft that was brought up at the court council meeting, the last court council meeting. The 10 foot 6 inches is basically the draft of the vessels, the Martha's Vineyard, the Nantucket, the Eagle. Some are deeper than this, but we think that this is similar to what our other vessels are. So we don't think we're putting ourselves in a position that we're not going to be able to operate. We won't be able to operate this vessel where we would be able to operate other vessels within the fleet. So if there are any questions on the parameters. with that, then we'll proceed in finalizing the request for proposal and the proposals that we'll be looking for. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be reviewing those applications that were received and narrowing them down to those that we think are the most qualified firms to do the design work.
Do we, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Yes. Just want to ask, because we've had so many recommendations, copy the hull design of the Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Where does that come into play? Do we suggest that, but see what they're going to recommend as well, or?
Yeah, I think we're telling them that we would prefer the whole design of the Martha's Vineyard or the Nantucket, but they're, as well as these other parameters, but they're free to suggest other changes and the reason for that, and we'll consider those other changes. But for something that seems to already work, why try to reinvent a different
Would that save us
configuration?
money as well, or not necessarily?
It could possibly, depending on who the architect is, whether or not they're familiar with the design of the Nantucket or the Martha's Vineyard. If either one of those architects were to be interested in this, the firm that designed the island home, whether or not that hull could be reconfigured somehow.
So all of the island
Of
home?
the island home.
That's Elliott Bay, is that right?
Elliott Bay, and that would be a single ender. But, so, all of those things are on the table, but we encourage the design firms to be familiar with our operation, the vessels that we operate, the harbors, and the routes that we operate on. It's important that we have reliable vessels that will be able to run in almost all weather conditions we face, except very adverse conditions.
Agree.
If there isn't anything else on that, next on the agenda is the approval of the 2014 summer and fall operating schedules. The schedules for the Martha's Vineyard route are virtually the same as this past year's schedule, with the exception of some minor changes in the starting and ending dates compared to this year's operating schedule.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Wayne, if I may, an article has been put in place for the next town meeting by a petitioner with signatures to exclude heavy trucks on Woods Hole Road from, I believe, 9 at night to 7 in the morning. Believe it or not. I think for a number of reasons, it's smoke in a box because it's a state road, and my guess is that the vote of the town meeting in Falmouth will have no impact on what goes on the state road, but it is there, and I don't know what kind of noise is going to come out of it, and I don't know whether this is going to start a groundswell of people complaining about late night and early morning trucks to meet early ferries. That's the key to the motivation for this article clearly is to stop those trucks at 4 in the morning lining up for the 6 o'clock ferries, so be aware. My guess is it's going to go away, but not quietly. Is that your understanding?
Yes. In the summer, we do have a 5:30 trip. There was a comment that the trucks are coming down at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't believe they're coming down that early, but we could check and see that they're all regular shippers that are on that 5:30 trip with hazardous materials. So if we had to wait until 9 o'clock to be able to ship that freight over, it would just congest the roads that much more during the busy day.
And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, the state took that road for exactly that reason, right? So,
I don't know the reason, but it is a state highway.
right.
And when I first arrived here at the authority, there was a similar effort to stop hazardous cargo coming down the toll road, and the then fire chief attempted to enforce that order, and it was reversed by the, I believe, the state fire marshal, if I'm correct. We still have a copy of that, that they have no authority to stop traffic on a state highway.
So I can't imagine, I don't know how it got this far, given that that is a road not under the control of the town of Falmouth, but it's proceedings, we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
So on the Nantucket route, however, we are proposing several changes to next year's schedule, including the departure times so that the MV Nantucket's first trip leaves Hyannis at 6:30 in the morning instead of 7:15. And also changing the departure time of the Gay Head so that its first trip leaves at 5:45 in the morning instead of 6 o'clock. And this is in order to accommodate the MV Nantucket's new proposed operating schedule. The MV Nantucket would then run opposite the MV Eagle schedule, with one boat leaving Hyannis at the same time the other boat is leaving Nantucket during the summer schedule. We are also proposing to tweak the Hyannis operating schedule a little bit, which will cause it to begin and end its current operating day 15 minutes later. These proposed changes would also allow us to close our terminals a little earlier in the evening and save some money. We've had meetings with Nantucket freight shippers in Nantucket and also on Hyannis on Wednesday, August 28th to discuss these proposed changes. Most of the truckers who attended the meeting spoke in favor of these proposed changes as being very positive. Most of the comments we received were about the bulk freight reservation program that we have and what changes could be made to that. So the Port Council voted at their meeting on September 11th to recommend to the authority members to approve the 2014 summer and fall operating schedules as proposed. We're requesting the approval, a vote to approve the proposed schedules.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion on this? I just want to recognize my colleague on the Port Council, Matt Lowell, who put a lot of work into this and is very proud of it, and I think this really cleans up a lot of issues that we've been having, so good job.
Everybody else involved.
Everybody else too.
Really, really good.
Okay, we'll take a roll call on that. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That's passed. Our next item.
Next item is having to do with the bulk freight reservation program, and management has reviewed the current policies and procedures in connection with this program, and we are recommending one small change, that we separate the processing of reservation requests from the more frequent bulk freight shippers from those shippers who travel on a less frequent basis, less than an average of one trip every 2 weeks for that particular schedule period. So the requests that we wouldn't eliminate these occasional shippers from the bulk freight reservation program. We would just process them in a different way. That requests from shippers carrying hazardous materials would continue to be processed prior to the requests we receive from shippers carrying food. Likewise, the reservation requests we receive from shippers carrying food would continue to be processed prior to those requests we receive from shippers carrying other commodities. So the more frequent hazardous shippers go first, and then we take the less frequent hazardous shippers before we move into the food, the trucks carrying food, and then the last category being all other commodities. So it's a minor change. I've provided you with a list of some of the shippers that might only make one reservation a year under this bulk reservation program. And so we're looking at this in incremental steps and saying that anybody that intends to travel less than once every 2 weeks during that scheduled period that we're accepting requests for, then we would put you at the back of the line and put the more frequent shippers ahead of the others. The Port Council voted at their meeting on September 11th to support management's efforts to improve this bulk freight reservation program. And if approved, this change would be implemented for the bulk reservation requests received for the 2014 summer and fall operating schedules.
Questions? Do we have a motion? Oh, go ahead.
I do see the possibility for issue developing, because just because a trucker carries a product here only every other week doesn't mean it's critical. It doesn't mean it's not a critical item. All that it means is that a replenishment every other week is fine instead of every week. So, when, somebody is going to have to play Solomon here and determine, well, this guy's delivering paper supplies every day, or W.B. Mason is there every day with a lot of staples and paper clips. But there's a much more critical product that only requires a replenishment every other week. Now, are we going to have somebody to arbitrate those issues and questions? Or, it is what it is.
Yeah, there's hazardous shipments that go once a year. And so perhaps they can fill in it if another hazardous shipper is going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and this other company goes once a year. Perhaps we could fill in on Tuesday or Thursday might be a day where we could fill that.
Clearly, I don't begin to have an answer. I can just see it as an opportunity to have somebody be concerned and upset by being put lower on the list than the product deserves to be, only because they don't do it every day or every hour. But it's an observation going nowhere. Thank you.
We have companies that are carrying and shipping 4 or 5 trucks a day.
Oh, I know. Oh, I understand the purpose of this change, and it certainly makes sense, but I also see the opportunity for an issue or two. Yeah, I think it's well thought out, and I think it's the right thing to do.
So moved.
Motion made. Wait a second.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the bulk freight reservation program. We're going to take a roll call on that. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. It's adopted.
The next item for your approval is creation of a new position in the engineering and maintenance department. This position would be a Maximo maintenance planner. Maximo is the software that is used on our computerized maintenance management system. And we're in need of an individual that can plan, schedule, monitor the completion of all of our preventive maintenance work orders, as well as the other corrective maintenance work orders we receive from time to time. And we think that this will be particularly helpful in planning work associated with each vessel's annual overhaul period. And based on input from the Director of Maintenance and Engineering, the port engineer, the maintenance supervisor, each vessel that goes into overhaul has a senior captain and a senior chief engineer. So we have a lot of supervisors on these projects, and I think we just need a better way of being able to plan, schedule the work, and then leave it up to the supervisors to see that the work gets accomplished. The proposed grade level for this new position would be a grade 12. That's 2 grade levels below the port engineer, the facilities engineer, and the maintenance supervisor position. The creation of any positions at grade 10 or above require the approval of the authority members. And we'd like to advertise and fill this position, if it's approved, as soon as possible. And the costs associated, the salary benefits, have been included in the preliminary draft of the 2014 operating budget.
Questions? Motion's made, do we have a second? Second. Motion's made and seconded, we'll take a roll call on this. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That position's created.
Thank you. And that completes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. Treasurer's report.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to present the preliminary draft of the 2014 operating budget, which was developed using the approved operating schedules through May 13th and the vessel operating schedules, which were just previously approved, discussed and approved. Our operating expenses are expected to increase by $497,000 over the most current estimate for 2013, which is based on 7 months actual, 5 months budget. They'll be increasing to $85,310,000 approximately, and that represents a 0.6% increase. I will point out that the estimate for this year does include the unanticipated, unbudgeted repairs to the O+ terminal because of Hurricane Sandy. It's part of the expenses. So. For the cost of service, our payroll expense is expected to increase by $512,000 or 1.7% versus the estimate. Vessel fuel oil is expected to increase by $444,000 or 4.7%. Crude oil is currently trading around $1.05 to $1.10 a barrel. It's about $10 more than it was a year ago at the same time. We are expecting crude oil prices to range between $90 and $105 for 2014, and this will translate into a $3.44 to $3.55 per gallon cost once we include the hedge premiums. Overall, we expect an average cost of just under $3.51 per gallon. For the 2013 budget, we had $3.62 per gallon. So a little bit of a drop in the average price. We hope. We are only hedged through the first half of the year at this point, so the second half is the kicker. Depreciation expense is expected to increase by $384,000 or 3.9% over the estimate for this year. The depreciation includes for the sewer pump out facilities and for the Palmer Avenue parking lot improvements, both the phase 1 and then a partial year for phase 2. Pension costs are expected to increase by $285,000 or 5.6%. And healthcare costs are expected to increase by $196,000, 2.8%. Other significant changes include terminal repairs are expected to decrease by $1,328,000, as dolphin and dock repairs are expected to go down by $1,411,000. And again, it should be noted that that comparison includes the $2.1 million in repairs for O+. Vessel dry dock expense is expected to increase by $798,000 or 56.1% over this year. Dry docks are scheduled for the Martha's Vineyard, the Governor, the Sankaty, the Eagle, and the Ino. Vessel engine parts and repairs are expected to decrease by $847,000, however, because this year we did a number of engine overhauls for the INO, the Martha's Vineyard, the Island Home, and the Eagle. Let me get ahead. So overall, our maintenance expense is expected to decrease by $1,382,000 or 10.5%. Turning towards the operating revenues, Prior to any rate increases, the projected operating revenues of $88,990,000 in 2014 represent an increase of $835,000 or 0.9% versus the estimate for this year. An additional $1 million from anticipated rate increases will be needed to cover next year's anticipated cost of service. So collectively, the projected total operating revenues of $89,990,000 would represent a 2.1% increase versus the estimate for 2013. Automobile revenue is expected to increase by $178,000 or 0.6%. Freight revenue is expected to increase by approximately $467,000 or 2.1%. Passenger revenue is expected to increase by $447,000 or 1.6%. And parking revenue is expected to increase by $665,000 or 12%. The authority's sinking fund, bond interest and principal requirements for 2014 total approximately $7.7 million. So based on our estimates of revenues and expenses for 2014, the authority's net operating income is expected to be approximately $3.1 million. No votes being requested at this time. This is for information purposes. We'll be coming back next month for approval. With that, if anyone has any questions.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
I have some as we get into the detail. Are you ready to step to the detail?
Ready?
Tell me what traffic expense is, please, under operating expenses.
Traffic, you're referring to page 3 of this. Traffic expense includes brochure distributions. It includes some production items that we have for that. It includes the variable message signs that we have. We charge that too. So.
Advertising, Reservation Bureau.
Now, why is that separate from a marketing expense? My next question was going to be a pretty significant decrease on page 5, on page 1 or something, on the advertising line, where you've taken 15.2% or almost $200,000 out of advertising. And I'd like to think that that $200,000 went somewhere else and just didn't evaporate.
Yeah, the estimate for 2013, I anticipate that number will be coming down on the advertising. It was a matter of how the placements of the advertisements went versus our budget for the year. So we'll be seeing that number will decrease. The delta between the two of them will be going down. Whether it will be all the way down to $1,075,000, I expect it probably will be just a little bit north of that, but not by much.
Well, let me put it a different way so that my simple mind will understand what you're doing. We're not taking any money away from our marketing program that has been effective over the past couple of years. We're not reducing our expenditure.
We are not. And this is a timing difference. So we take the actual advertising expenses through July, and then we've got the remaining 5 months of the operating budget. And depending on how that was allocated in the operating budget, where we're spending the money at a faster rate, or it was allocated in the budget by months at a different way than how we actually expend it. So that we just think that there's a variation at the end of the year. We're going to be closer to what the budget amount was for this year, which will then put next year's budget amount slightly higher than this year's budget amount for advertising.
You got that? Explain that to me when we finish the meeting. Okay, you know where I'm coming from.
Yes.
It's just that, we've done too good a job here getting the word out. If anything, I'd like to get it out longer and stronger and harder and more often.
You'll note actually in the comparison, the 2013 budget was for $1,050,000. This is $25,000.
All right, thank you.
Couple things I'd like to ask questions about. Increase ambulance rates to comparable commercial, what will that entail? How much?
We'd have to look
Yeah.
at
Some of the ambulances are under 20 feet, some of them are between the 20 and 25 category.
I thought we brought them up to regular rates a couple of years ago.
Right, and this would just be a continuation of that. So whatever that rate happens, how it works out. I'd have to-
So you're looking at the
The next
proposed
item.
increases?
Yes.
And we're showing no difference? We're showing
No, it's showing you. Increase ambulance rates to comparable commercial vehicle rate. Rate includes driver and passengers.
You're looking at the rates, the next item on the...
Okay, some of the ambulances are under 20 feet, so they wouldn't be changing. What it would be, again, there's some that are between 20 and 25 feet. So they'd be going, for instance, on the Vineyard route, they'd be going in the off-season from $82.50 up to $87 on that rate. So it'd be, we're proposing to keep it the same as the commercial rate. You know, there had been a disconnect a number of years ago, and we've corrected that.
All right, so, okay, that's why I was asking about that. I have no issue with the parking rates whatsoever. I think they're certainly good. Do we know how much the Island Queen charges for passengers? Yeah.
I believe it's $10 for a one-way. I don't know if they have a round trip, whether it's just double the one-way rate or...
So it's substantially more than we charge.
it is.
They went up because they lowered they had to lower their passenger counts because of the weight issue with the Coast Guard. So they increased their passenger rates at the same time.
I'll tell you in a second.
Do you know?
Yes, the parking rate,
No, Island Queen.
passenger is 10.
10? That's good.
Still cash on. And in pencil. And that parking? 15 or 20?
Any other questions or comments on this?
In terms of the proposed rate adjustments, based on the allocation of next year's projected revenues and expenses, it is proposed that approximately $1 million in additional revenue be raised from adjustments on the Martha's Vineyard route.
Excuse me a second. Island Queen, one way $12. Round trip 20. Child 5 to 12, one way $6. Parking. 20 trips, $150 savings, $50, $10 a day. Thank you.
So we're looking for approximately $1 million in additional revenue to be raised from adjustments on the Martha's Vineyard rates, and that we would be having no rate adjustments to the Nantucket route, other than a few minor housekeeping changes that we would like to implement. As part of the assessment on how best to allocate any proposed rate adjustments, the staff reviewed the most recent cost of service analysis by route. And for the Vineyard route, we're proposing to increase the over 20-foot truck fares by approximately 5.2%. Those were last increased back in 2007. To increase the daily fee parking rates to $10 in the off-season and $13 in the on-season. And to increase the parking permit rates by $25. Under the housekeeping category, we need to add some additional fare types to our tariffs to cover some items currently not addressed, specifically three-wheeled motorcycles and tandem bicycles. These changes would be made for both routes. With the distribution of rate adjustments, total revenues will be split 57.1% for the Vineyard route and 42.9% from the Nantucket route, while the cost of service is projected to be 57.2% and 42.8% respectively. So again, we're presenting this for discussion purposes only. We'll be coming back at the next month's meeting for approval. So no votes requested.
Anything else on this? Thank you for that. Moving right along.
Next is procurement, and first up is contract 15-13, parking lot improvements for the Palmer Avenue parking lot, Phase 2. The low bidder was Lawrence Lynch Corp. of Falmouth for a total contract price of $2,798,382. We received 6 bids, and Lawrence Lynch was the low bidder. This work will be started this fall and completed by next spring. And we're recommending that the board vote to authorize the general manager to award this contract 15-13 to the low bidder, Lawrence Lynch Corp. of Falmouth, for a total contract price of $2,798,382.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and thirded. Is there any discussion on this?
I have one question.
Yes.
What is the total that Phase 1 and Phase 2 will be?
We think it's going to be, when we're completed, about $4 million overall. The cost of demolishing the old skating rink, doing the improvements, the additional parking spaces that we picked up in that area, the new parking lot entrance on Skating Lane, that work was completed last May, and that was about 1.2 million total. And this contract here is almost 2.8 million. So we think combined that the overall project's going to be somewhere around $4 million when it's completed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Through you, please. Mark Rosen, is the current layout as it exists now efficient? Is that exactly what we had hoped it would be? Or while we're constructing, should we be looking at anything else?
During the construction, they're going to be relining and better utilizing the space, make it more efficient during the phase 2.
This would be our last bite at this apple, I'm sure, for a while.
We started with a blank slate as to how the lot should be lined and where the buses should travel.
And it's working.
The pickup spot. Well, it will once these improvements have been completed.
Right.
But what we have now is working.
Mhm.
And now we're going into this other part where the lanes may be going one way, but when the improvements are done, it's going to be more efficiently laid out.
But no mid-course corrections on what we have done to now.
Correct. That's correct. We're not anticipating any need for corrections.
Yes.
What have we gained with the whole project?
I think once we move out the bus maintenance facility, we'll probably be up to about 1,800, 1,900 spaces. So we may pick up another 400 or 500 spaces at the Palmer Avenue lot,
And efficiency.
which will we'll be able to avoid having to go to Gifford Street on like we have had in the past, because that lot held about 400 vehicles, so we'll be able to move that volume to Palmer Avenue. And then next October, year from this October, where we should be acquiring the Stone property under the purchase and sale agreement, and that those improvements will start a year from now.
That's another 1,900 spaces up there?
But that's going to be about another 1,900 spaces.
It's huge. Thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay, we'll take a roll call on our motion to award this contract. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next.
Next is, we're looking for a vote authorizing the general manager to award this contract to the, this is for the dry dock and overhaul services for the MV Gay Head. The bid opening, originally scheduled for September 20th, has been extended to September 25th. So we'd like authorization, once those bids are opened, to award that contract to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. The original budget amount for this was $288,000. We've added some additional work with estimates in for additional steel replacement, grid cooler replacements, reduction gear overhauls. So we now think the budget is more like $578,000, about $300,000 more. And in addition, we have a capital budget item estimate for the sewage holding tank and the piping modifications to do with the pump out modifications. And that's estimated at almost $200,000, to give you an idea of where we think that the bid price is going to come in for this work. It's going to be close to $750,000.
What number are you looking for a vote at?
The lowest and eligible responsible bidder that we expect to get, at least one bid, and the work has to be done. Perhaps there'll be more more bidders, but on some of these we only get one bid, so I prefer not to have a limit where we would have to then delay it until the next meeting in October.
Yes, sir.
It's an awful lot of money to put into an old boat. I mean, are we going to get our years out of this?
Yes. Yeah. We have to do the sewage mods.
Right.
There's some additional steel replacement that may have to be done, the grid coolers, and the reduction gear overhaul is a big item. The normal painting and sandblasting, and all of that work as well.
Boat sound otherwise? The boat sound otherwise?
Expecting to keep it operating for good condition for
30, 40 years.
for another 15, 20 years. Push it a little.
Wayne's nodding yes, and
I
Carl.
wanted to get his reaction.
10 years, Carl?
We'll have to. We can't afford to build new boats, so we can make it work 10 years.
What is the oldest of the three freight boats?
I think they're all just about the same.
Are they?
Vintage, about 1982 in that range. 30 years. They're all sisters.
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is, right, Wayne?
It is, unfortunately. Yes.
We're going to vote on it is what it is.
Yeah.
What would you consider to be totally unreasonable?
We'd have to go back and look and see why our numbers would be off, and then talk to the bidder to see if they understood or misunderstood what the specifications were. So we haven't run into that, but
Is there a number at which you would choose not to repair this boat? I mean,
well, I mean, a lot of this work is going to be required to get a new certificate of inspection. So without getting the work completed, this vessel will be laid up until that work is done.
Well, we gotta move.
And
I move,
it's a workhouse for the Nantucket route.
And I apologize for the way we're doing this. We're trying to catch up, and this new addition to my department will definitely help us in the planning and scheduling and all of this. And we should be coming to the board and awarding contracts far in advance of the shipyard periods. And I requested Wayne to put this on because the boat's going in December, and I just need to lock up those dry docks as soon as possible. It was our fault. We were a little behind on the paperwork and the drawings and everything, and I apologize for that. You shouldn't be voting on, in this way, you should be voting on the actual contracts.
Given what it is, I move the general manager's discretion
I second.
Motion's made and seconded.
accepting the bid.
We'll take a roll call on that. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we have the Port Council's report.
Okay,
Mr. Jones.
thank you. Just a couple of things. When we opened the Port Council meeting last time, we had a moment of silence, and I mentioned a fellow Vietnam veteran, Rick Brascola, who was the head of security at Morgan Stanley when the second tower went down, and he was attributed to saving.
Excuse me, but I can't hear Mr. Jones.
Okay. Anyways, he saved.
Can you hear him now?
Can you hear that, Judge?
He's approaching the bench.
Could we have a sidebar, please? Okay, I'm right on top of it now.
Okay, you want to raise your right hand?
I do, and I solemnly swear. But in any event, he saved upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 lives of the Morgan Stanley building there, and he lost his own life along with 4 others in doing so. He was the last one out of the building. Actually, I had received an email from a guy by the name of Joe Galloway, who was a reporter for Night Ritter, who was Colin Powell's speechwriter at one time, and said that I think our friend is gone, and received another one later in the afternoon almost confirming that. But anyway, so it was a special meaning to me. But I can see that somebody went into the internet to write what he wrote, so my congratulations to our record keeper for doing that. And I've also got a book if you want to read it. But in any event, moving on from there, well, we talked about the dredging in the harbor, which you've already talked about, but I think it's important to highlight the fact, especially here in Nantucket, that the folks from Nantucket get very proactive in keeping in touch with the Army Corps and the powers to be to keep this on the front burner. Now, having gone to the meetings and things, that they know that Hyannis and Nantucket is an important thing, but in the course of all of the projects in the United States, it's not necessarily, the top of the radar screen. So it's a situation of the squeaky wheel type of thing. And now that we're going to get this taken care of because of an emergency with FEMA funds, that's not always going to be there. So we need to get in the pipeline to continually see if we can do a maintenance dredging schedule. They don't like doing this, but putting it on a maintenance dredging schedule, and it still goes back and everybody has to make a decision. But it's super important to Nantucket, I mean more so than Hyannis. So having said that, on the freight vessel, we had some discussions on that, and some of the things that Wayne mentioned about the draft of 10.6. The suggestion was that when we finally go out for an RFP, is to see if we can get it less than that. Being the shoaling situation that we have, if we can get a vessel that draws 10 feet or 9.5 feet, it's going to be to our advantage. Now's the time when you're in the design to do it. So you do with that, they've set a maximum. Let's see if we can, tweak that a little bit. The other is a low wake. Some of these freight vessels, they'll scare the devil out of you. If you go by in the middle of the sound, the Katamer and Sankaty, they kick up a hell of a wake. And the other thing, which I think is most important on the ships, is we have an opportunity right now to develop the ship that we can take the plans and we can reproduce it 5 years down the road to another thing, for the redundancy of them. And I went to a commercial boat show in Boston where they had the oil recovery vessel there. And they have 4 oil recovery vessels in the country in different sections, the Northeast and in the South and the Gulf and over in the West Coast and up into Alaska. And each one of those vessels are identical. Each piece of electronics they have is identical. Steering stations are identical. There's absolutely 100% redundancy, because that way, if they have an oil spill in Alaska, they don't have to continually man these boats. They can get the crews will go from oil spill to oil spill. They will go there and they'll know exactly where everything is, how to run the boat, and for the shelf life of their electronics, if they need to buy 2 radars and just put one on the shelf, they can put that into any single one of the boats. So I think that in doing this thing here, if we can't do ship for ship, we can certainly do bridge to bridge of where everything is, and it'll save money and time and things like that in the long run. So those are some of the things we talked about there, and let me see if there's anything else worthwhile. Oh, Nat talked about the food concessions, that he thought that was important to have those on the boats. Yes, we're talking about new boats, yeah. Anyways, one other thing I want to mention, mainly because it's on the minutes, and you might have, is the fact of the experience that I have with some military buddies on a trip to Nantucket. And I want to, first of all, if you read this, it would look like, and say, well, everybody was mad, angry, and unhappy about what happened. That couldn't be furthest from the truth. This was the highlight of their trip. They were here 5 days. And between that and a lobster bake I had in my backyard, that just sent them, back to Texas and Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee. As you can see, we had a language barrier, but we worked our way through it. But I brought this up to the Port Council for the simple reason that I think there's some things that stick in my mind now that, we might want to look at and improve ourselves on. And one of the things that I mentioned, and we had a nice conversation with Mary and everything like that, is making a reservation. I would suggest to everybody, if you haven't done it, is try to go through and make a reservation. What I came up and was a stumbling point to me is that when you get from, when you want to go and things like that, that you get into develop a profile, or what's the verbiage they use? Yeah. All I want to do is buy a ticket. I don't want to develop a profile or be a customer of the things. I want to buy a ticket. At first it says if you have a profile, click here. Easy. And these guys do it all the time, so they walk themselves through it. Me, I know nothing. I don't want a profile. I just want to buy a ticket. And it stopped me at that point. I didn't want to fill it in more because I'd probably end up buying a ticket that I didn't want. But in any event, it was those experiences that I had. I would highly recommend anybody there to take the bus tour. It was absolutely excellent, and everything was great. But if you read this, it's a little bit negative sounding, and nobody's upset. As a matter of fact, everybody's happy, and I wish you'd note that in our port council, you know.
I'll send a revised draft.
Thank you. So anyways, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any new business?
Can we follow on what Bob was just talking about?
No.
Because I've heard this from others as well, that they don't want a profile, they want to buy a ticket. Why do we need a profile if you're just doing a one-time purchase of a ticket?
It allows that person to come back and be able to look up the reservation and change it, modify it. If we need to contact the person and let them know that that trip has been canceled, then we've got the information of everyone who has a reservation, a vehicle reservation. They're not going standby, it's someone that has a reservation. If possible, we try to contact these people ahead of time if we know that the service is not going to be running.
So we're talking not about a walk-on ticket, we're talking about...
Well, I thought you were talking about a walk-on ticket.
You can't buy it online unless it's a high-speed ticket.
No,
You
can't buy
need a
it.
profile
And then high speed is, again, if we have to contact somebody that has a reservation on that trip, because the boat's not operating, then we try to contact those people and let them know.
Walk-on for a regular ferry trip, you walk up to the counter and you buy a ticket.
But we're talking about the high speed.
Talking about the high speed and automobiles.
Tickets are picked up at the ticket office on the day of sailing, so that for identification purposes, we need the name of the person that bought the tickets. We're waiting there for them to be picked up. Until we get to the point where you can print it out at home and bring it down and have it scanned, we're not there yet.
Are we close to that?
We're looking into it, and that's one of the goals that you gave me, was to look into
Right.
all of that to see what would be involved in doing that.
You'd be excluded anyway, Bob Jones, John Smith, Jane Doe,
I use Port Marshall, and
they wouldn't let you, Bob Jones.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything Wayne just said, and the reason for it, I think it's the semantics that you use. I think it's, you know, that something, we need this information because, and you can call it whatever you want, it's an easier way to approach it. I came to a screeching halt when it said, you know, to develop a profile. That isn't the word they used, but set up an account or whatever. You just want to, if you change the verbiage and get the same results, I don't think anybody would kick. One gentleman said that they were frustrated with the web and called. And that solved the problem. So whatever it's worth.
How about contact information? That's not so semantically loaded as profile is these days.
Right.
And then you a couple sentences explaining, hey, we may have to contact you if things go sour. That might, something as simple as that might be what you're thinking.
Exactly. Couldn't
I
be easier.
agree with that, I think that's absolutely right.
Yes, sir.
I've always had the same reaction. I believe firmly the boat line loses a tremendous amount of passenger traffic on the INO because of that profile requirement. Your competition just asks for a phone number. And I agree with Wayne, and I understand what he's trying to accomplish. For a car carrier, it makes complete sense. But I think you have to balance what I think hurts your traffic by asking for all these rules versus just getting a phone number if the boat cancels. And I would strongly encourage you to consider not having that requirement just for walk-on on the fast ferry, because I think it does hurt your traffic.
When you buy a ticket online, you buy it by credit card. You pay for it with a credit card. You have to give your name, address, the billing address, the account number that it's being charged to, the expiration date, the security code, all those things that have to be provided anyway. If you're going forward with the purchasing of a ticket.
But I think when people buy by credit card, they understand they have to do that. Even to drop the word profile.
Yeah.
Eliminate the word profile. They want to punch in, method of purchase. They can't do it for cash online, so it's got to be credit card. Select the credit card, give us your number, give us your code on the back, give us a phone number, billing address. But even that's short of, you have to have a profile in order to buy this ticket. I think, to me that makes sense.
Contact,
Yeah,
contact number.
to me that
Makes more
makes
sense.
sense.
If I saw it, I think I'd be getting, all of a sudden I'd be getting all kinds of,
Yeah, you buy a box of pencils
Information and stuff
online.
like that,
Buy a box
yeah.
of pencils online for $4. You have to give them a credit card, phone number, and billing address, and
Nobody buys pencils anymore.
We steal them.
can we look into that? See if we can make that a little more user-friendly?
Yeah, I think we can maybe change this
yeah,
around, so
it's all semantic.
at the end of the process, you can choose whether you want to create an account or not and be able to come back. There are a lot of websites out there that do that.
All right.
So we can look at maybe the order in which the information is taken and the language that's used.
Go to Marriott. You click on Marriott, they ask you your password. You don't have to ever give them one other piece of information except where you want to go and when you want to stay. Everything else is profile.
But you had to set up that
You have to set up the
account
profile.
beforehand. Yeah.
Right. Or not, or you can do it every time.
Yeah.
Okay, any public comment? Yes, sir.
I'm not going to stand because of my knees. I've been on our Commission for Disabilities here on the island, back when my mom was disabled. I think the Steamship Authority does a really good job for the mobility disabled. But if you've never been, first off, if you've never used the ferry before, and certainly some of our clients are in that situation, and you're coming to it, even if you've been on it before, but you've never had a mobility impaired person with you, you just don't really know all of the really good things which the Steamship Authority does. We have lifts, not only on the ferries, but on the shuttle buses. If you haven't got a wheelchair, each terminal will wheel out a wheelchair for you, and put you on, let you get on the boat with it and take it off. You can't take it away with you when you leave the boat, but we do that. I know that if you're bringing somebody in a car who is mobility impaired and needs a wheelchair, if you're smart enough to mention it to the folks who are loading the cars, they will load you in a place where you can get the person and the wheelchair out of the car and moved over to the elevator. We all know those things. There may be some more that I don't know of, but I would like to see them written down very clearly, and maybe have a little flag on the website that says information for mobility impaired, and then have a paragraph that tells all of these good things that we do for people, so that they won't be inhibited about coming, thinking, how the heck am I going to get grandma from here to there and do this and do that? We do it already. I think you do a good job. The one real thing that I would hope would come from this is maybe if you sit down and write down all of the things you're doing, some one of us will look at it and say, there's something else we could be doing. It wouldn't cost us any money, because, what I've seen over the years, again and again, is that everybody's delighted to help. All the members of the staff, they bend over backwards to help you if they just know you need the help, and give them the opportunity. So why not put something on the website, a simple note, but do have the little button or flag right on the main web page, so that folks who might think, God, I don't know how I can do it, will have no doubt about it. Wouldn't cost much, I hope.
That's a good idea. Anything else?
We do have a traveler's tip for Nantucket residents that we try to make available, and I think the new site, we've tried to make the information more readily available, where people are slowly going to the new site. And at some point in the near future, we're going to be directing all of the website visitors to the new site as well. Hopefully that will help. But for those that don't use a computer, we have the pamphlets and
Anything else from the public, board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property and to discuss the authority's strategy with respect to collective bargaining, because a public discussion of these matters may have a detrimental effect on the authority's negotiating and bargaining positions. These matters include the potential purchase of 60 School Street in Hyannis, the authority's negotiations with the Independent Steamship Authority Workers Union regarding the authority's unlicensed vessel employees, and the authority's negotiations with Teamsters Local 59 regarding the authority's licensed deck officers, including the possible ratification of both the collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters and the merger agreement with the Teamsters and the New England Teamsters and Trucking Industry Pension Fund. Any vote on whether to ratify these agreements will be taken only after we reconvene in public session. The public disclosure of any more information with respect to these subjects would compromise the purpose for which the executive session is being called. After the conclusion of the executive session, we will reconvene in public. May I have a motion to this effect?
So moved.
Second. Motion's made and seconded. We'll take a roll call. Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Hanover?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Tierney?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are convened into executive session.